someone myself who is, primarily philosophically aligned with the Bitcoin narrative as bringing this kind of decentralized, sovereign, uncensorable money to the world, in order to do that in the most effective way, there needs to be trade-offs that are made that makes it impossible to have a one-size-fits-all model. So in a lot of ways, there is kind of this almost a defense mechanism that Bitcoiners have, where they're like, we can solve all the problems, but it's like, if you want to solve all the problems, then you can't solve the problem that you're really trying to solve for, which is, redefining global-based money, given the
Yeah,
trade-offs that are required.
I think that's true. Look, network effects are real, and how people drive network effects are not only growing the network but defending the network. So that's what the Bitcoin narrative is. The incredible maxi pushback is the defending of the network. We should conquer all. But the reality is, I think that, and the question I'll give back to you is, what is the money part you're trying to solve? Do we have to solve every part of money, or is that just a legacy way of looking at it? Can we break money down into certain functions and split it down? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think at its core, what Bitcoin is trying to solve for is this kind of global, predictable base money. Now, whether you incorporate sort of financial services as a part of money is a separate discussion. But I think Bitcoin at its core is supposed to provide almost this boring digital store of value that is uncensorable, that is uninflatable, that does really just one thing very well. And that is, transferring ownership in a predictable way that allows for you to go from effectively store and transfer value, and that value being high value. So effectively a large value global settlement network that requires at the base layer, I'd argue, very explicit conservative design principles, where if Bitcoin is going to be predictable in the way that it is, then it can't necessarily compete in the kind of the technological revolution that we're seeing in other public blockchains. So I view Bitcoin really as this monetary revolution that requires conservatism at the base layer, that effectively trades off the ability to compete in kind of the feature-rich world of other public blockchains.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. The only thing I can't square in my head yet is, you and I both talk about it as a base layer or pristine collateral. The issue is it's not being used as such by anybody. That's I can't get my head around, because actually what is the collateral of this current system is ETH. Now, I'm no ETH maximalist either. I'm just an observer. And I'm like, I can't square that away, because it's not like at the bottom of every DeFi protocol is the collateral of Bitcoin. It's not.
Yeah, so I guess it depends on your universal set of what users look like. So, I'd argue that El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin is the type of user that Ethereum might never attract. And that's effectively because it's being used as a nation state treasury. It isn't really venture funded. It's had this kind of mystical founders myth where there isn't a single point of failure in the way that other emerging blockchains might see. So I don't necessarily think that it's productive to limit usability of Bitcoin to kind of DeFi or posting it as collateral to borrow and spend. I'm from Morocco myself, which is an emerging market, and when you discuss kind of the demand for a hedge against capricious governments, something like Bitcoin is top of mind over something like Ethereum or an
yeah. And I think the point being is they're two entirely different things. I think
exactly.
We probably violently agree with each other, and I think that makes sense. Is it depends what kind of adoption we're looking for within it. If we're looking for nation states, corporate balance sheets, and others, then stuff like Ethereum doesn't make sense, because it's not trying to be money. It's trying to do other things. But base layer of money, yes. I mean, it works at that kind of sovereign state level, corporate level, a supranational entity level.
Yeah, and I mean, we're even seeing that in a stat in the big ideas section that we saw is people are recognizing that Bitcoin doesn't necessarily offer the functionality that Ethereum offers. And so they wrap their Bitcoin on Ethereum as an ERC20 token, and then do kind of the same high power functionality, but have exposure to Bitcoin's price movements. Of course, not without counterparty risk, but it kind of still an important broader observation that I think that this is a positive sum game. I think Ethereum does things that Bitcoin simply does not, cannot, and should not want to do. And I think Bitcoin does things that Ethereum will never be able to do. Simply the idea of, let's say, just transitioning from one consensus algorithm to another is something that Ethereum is trying to do with the transition to proof of stake, but that Bitcoin in its philosophy would never do, and actually argues that that's a fundamental mishap on Ethereum's point, given just the general kind of lack of predictability that comes with these sort of technological upgrades. So if I recap that, it's almost like Bitcoin prides itself on the predictability of the rules. It doesn't offer all the features that other chains offer because it needs to be predictable and it's serving a specific singular use case. And vice versa, it's Bitcoin kind of needs to almost embrace some of the innovation and experimentation we're seeing outside of it, recognizing that there are different trade-offs being made, namely kind of choosing that innovation over experimentation over the kind of stability or predictability of the network.
Yeah, and it depends how we address this. If you address it philosophically, that's fine, but we also have to address it as investors. So
It's true.
Predictability itself does not necessarily generate superior returns. I mean, and so that's how I look at the ecosystem. I look at network adoption. Now, whether that's Ethereum or Solana or NFTs or any part of the ecosystem, and use that as my guide, because what I'm trying to do here is capitalize on participating in a technological revolution. Some of that is money, and that can be separated out. I can just own some Bitcoin. But like we do with US treasuries, we don't own them all the time, because there are times when you want to go out the risk curve and times when you want to come further closer to the risk curve. So that's kind of how I think of it.